Played by the A-Team's Dwight Schultz, Reginald Barclay III, or Reg for short, is one of Star Trek's fan-favorite characters. Schultz puts this down to the fact that he's not the shining example of Starfleet perfection that makes up the majority of 90s Star Trek crews. He's shy, a bit nerdy, and struggles to form social connections with people. He prefers to escape into the fictional world rather than confront the real one, all of which are things I feel a lot of us can relate to. Barclay proved so popular after his first appearance that he appeared in 4 subsequent episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, and later played an integral part in getting the Voyager crew back to the Alpha Quadrant. He appeared in 6 episodes of Voyager, and also got to meet one of his heroes when he shook hands with Zefram Cochrane in Star Trek First Contact. All of this is widely known, but there are small character moments that are easy to forget, or behind-the-scenes stories that shed more light on the creation of the beloved Enterprise crew member. So, with all that in mind, I'm Bree from Trek Culture, and here are 10 things that you didn't know about Lieutenant Barclay. Number 10. He has something in common with 7 of 9. Reg Barclay suffered a few physical and mental ailments in his time on the Enterprise. One of these was an addiction to the holodeck, dubbed holo-addiction or holodiction. Given the opportunities presented in Star Trek's holographic technology, it's surprising that this wasn't a more common affliction in the 24th century. Struggling to form connections with other members of the crew, Barclay retreated into a fantasy world where he could be the charming, romantic hero he wanted to be. Barclay is helped with his addiction by Geordi LaForge and Deanna Troi, who help him form real-life connections with his crewmates. His obsession with finding the missing USS Voyager leads to a relapse in the season 6 episode Pathfinder, when his obsession leads him to create a fully functional replica of the ship and its crew. In Voyager season 7, holo-addiction grips 7 of 9 when she too becomes obsessed with a holographic representation of Voyager and its crew. In Human Error, 7 attempts to improve her social skills but becomes increasingly overwhelmed by the emotions that these new connections stir up. 7's obsession alerts the attention of Janeway, who chastises her for spending too much time on the holodeck instead of fulfilling her duties. That's a bit rich from a woman who once deleted a handsome hologram's wife. Number 9. He loved the Three Musketeers. Reg Barclay's love for the Three Musketeers is, of course, well documented in the TNG episode Hollow Pursuits. When he confronts his holo addiction, Reg deletes the Three Musketeers simulation, but that clearly wasn't the end of his connection to the classic novel by Alexandre Dumas. In the DS9 episode Image in the Sand, Worf and O'Brien reminisce about their time on the Enterprise, in an attempt by the latter to comfort his friend over the death of his wife Dax. In this, the subject of Barclay and his Three Musketeers program comes up, but surely this is impossible. While the simulation may have entered legend aboard the Enterprise, the pair's assertion that Barclay often asked crewmates to join him in the Three Musketeers program suggests that he resurrected it, though he probably did so by removing the problematic representation of Deanna Troi and his fellow crewmates. It's heartwarming to imagine Reg Barclay sharing his holo programs with the Enterprise crew instead of hiding out in them. It's also funny to imagine the likes of Worf and O'Brien attempting to duck invitations to Barclay's swashbuckling adventure game nights. Number 8. He has an unfortunate nickname. To prove the old adage about the weak picking on those who are weaker, Wesley Crusher coined an unfortunate nickname for poor, shy Reg Barclay. While Reg struggled to fit into the Enterprise crew, Wesley Crusher dubbed him Lieutenant Broccoli. When you're being bullied by Wesley Crusher, then you know that something has to change. Barclay's nervousness and poor service record were all symptoms of his holo addiction, but the nickname followed him around for quite a bit. In a neat bit of karma, the very fandom that rejected Wesley Crusher embraced the nerdy, socially awkward Reg Barclay, leading to 4 subsequent appearances in TNG. So take that, Wesley. The bullying of Reg is something that's not always seen in the utopian future of Star Trek, with most people respecting their colleagues and not resorting to cruel name-calling. In Hollow Pursuits, Will even considers having Barclay removed from the ship for not meeting standards demanded by the Federation flagship. It's a refreshing take on the structure of Starfleet that shows that not every officer is an unflappable expert in their chosen field. Thankfully, Captain Picard gave Barclay another chance, as he would do with Wesley Crusher, and the character went on to great heights. Number 7. The TNG writers struggled to bring him back. Reg Barclay was an instant hit, due both to the writing of this relatable, realistic character and to the great performance by Dwight Schultz. Plans were immediately set in motion to bring Barclay back for another episode of TNG, but there was a problem. So wonderful was the character that the writers didn't want to bring him back just for the sake of it. Instead, they agonized over how to bring him back. They wanted the character to develop rather than be stuck in the mold of a nervous Starfleet officer with a holodeck addiction. It took the writer's room the better part of a year to find the perfect Reg Barclay story, Season 4's The Nth Degree. This was a favorite episode of Dwight Schultz and Barclay fans alike. In it, Barclay's intelligence is subsequently improved by an alien force attempting to make contact with the Enterprise. It was the perfect evolution for the character, who had moved past his anxieties by becoming an actor and super intelligent Starfleet officer. At the end of The Nth Degree, Barclay is disappointed at being returned to his usual self, but he's reassured by Troy and Geordi in a touching scene that hints that he still has some residual intelligence left from his encounter. Number 6. He has a cat called NEELIX. When Barclay created his Voyager replica, he may have experienced a relapse of his holo addiction, but the Voyager crew similarly impacted his real life. Barclay's work on the Pathfinder project was abruptly halted when his unauthorized holodeck replica was discovered, but his obsessive use of it did eventually pay off when he used it to prove the best way to contact Voyager in the Delta Quadrant. Barclay's Voyager obsession was channeled into his home life as well. He has an affinity for cats, having once looked after Data's pet Spot, and ends up adopting his own cat during Voyager. He calls the silver Persian cat NEELIX after Voyager's Talaxian crew member. The cat ends up influencing the simulation of the actual NEELIX, who audibly purrs to the surprise of the Doctor. When he realized that Barclay has named his cat after NEELIX, the Doctor tells Barclay that the Talaxian would be proud to have had such an impact on Reg. It's unsurprising that Barclay has an affinity with cats, as he struggles forming social connections. While cats are definitely aloof, they don't crave the affection in the same way, something for him to aspire to, perhaps. Number 5. The character was the brainchild of Gene Roddenberry. The origins of Reg Barclay can be traced back to the Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, who, according to actor Dwight Schultz, felt like such a character was missing from Star Trek. The character of Reg is genuinely groundbreaking. In the utopian future of Roddenberry's Star Trek, everyone seems incredibly self-confident and they're all excellent at their jobs. This can often make it hard for audiences to identify with the characters on an emotional level. Reg, on the other hand, he felt the pressures that many of us would have felt serving aboard a starship. The Federation flagship is incredibly overwhelming. Not only are you constantly at the forefront of space exploration and potential conflict, but there are also hundreds of people aboard whose names you have to remember. It's a daunting prospect for anyone, let alone someone who clearly suffers from imposter syndrome and social anxiety the way that Reg Barclay clearly does. It was an inspired move by Roddenberry to bring someone more realistic and grounded into the Star Trek universe, but much of the credit should also go to writer Sally Caves, who wrote Reg's first episode, as well as actor Dwight Schultz, for making the character such a hit with fans. Number 4. He has an illness named after him. Reg Barclay has quite the medical history: holo addiction, transporter phobia, and hypochondria. The latter led him to self-diagnose with transporter psychosis and Turelian death syndrome. He of course had neither of these conditions, but does have the questionable honor of having one particular illness named after him: Barclay's protomorphosis syndrome. It's something of a misnomer given that the disease was accidentally created by Beverly Crusher. What is it with the Crusher family holding grudges against Reg? The reason that protomorphosis syndrome was named after Barclay isn't that Dr. Crusher was avoiding blame, it's because it was intrinsically linked to a genetic abnormality in Barclay's body. This abnormality meant that when he was given a hypospray to activate dormant cells that could fight the flu, all of his dormant cells were activated. This caused a nightmarish transformation into a prehistoric creature which soon affected everyone else on the ship. Barclay blamed himself for the bizarre transformations of his crewmates, but Crusher reassured him that it was all down to her, before then offering to name the condition after him. Beverly really needs to learn to read the room. Number 3. Barclay was almost in TNG'S Lower Decks. Reg Barclay would be such a great guest star on an episode of Lower Decks that it's surprising it hasn't happened yet. However, Barclay did almost feature in the Next Generation episode, which inspired Mike McMahon's animated Star Trek comedy. Lower Decks was a well-regarded episode of TNG's final season, which portrayed the events of the average Star Trek episode as seen through the eyes of junior officers. Originally, Barclay was considered to join the team of lowly Star Trek officers serving aboard the Enterprise D. It would certainly be interesting to see how Barclay interacted with those who weren't senior staff, but the writers decided wisely to remove him from the final script. Ultimately, Reg Barclay was so well known by the time of TNG's final season that he would have stolen the limelight from the other characters. Given that Lower Decks was a fresh take on the regular cast through the eyes of unseen characters, it would have lessened the appeal of the episode's unique hook if Barclay had joined them. Oh, but he should definitely still show up on Lower Decks. Pretty please, Mike? Number 2. Dwight Schultz lobbied for the role of Reg. As a character actor previously best known for playing Howling Mad Murdoch in the A-Team, Dwight Schultz had worked with a number of people related to Star Trek: The Next Generation prior to being cast as Reg Barclay. He had worked with Worf actor Michael Dorn in an episode of Chips, and knew Whoopi Goldberg from their time filming The Long Walk Home. As a huge sci-fi fan, Schultz was keen to take on a role in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and expressed his interest to TNG's executive producer Rick Berman. However, it was his friendship with Whoopi Goldberg that was instrumental in getting him the role of Barclay. She saw how great a fit Schultz was for the show and said as much to Star Trek producers. Schultz swiftly received a phone call from his agent about the role of Reg Barclay. As a Star Trek fan, who gets to take his place on the USS Enterprise, Schultz reflected that he was the lucky one chosen in an interview with TV Zone. It's that love of Star Trek and Reg's own self-conscious and nervous personality that resonated so well with fans, who got to live their own Star Trek fantasies vicariously through him. Number 1. He was almost Voyager's doctor. Reg Barclay would eventually play an integral part in bringing the Voyager crew back to the Alpha Quadrant, but he almost had an even larger role in the Star Trek spin-off. When Voyager was in development, an outline suggested that the show's holographic doctor could actually be based on Reg Barclay and could be played by Dwight Schultz. In this version of Voyager, Barclay would have left the Enterprise in TNG Season 7 to complete work on the Emergency Medical Hologram program. Sadly, Barclay never got his proper send-off in TNG's final season. It's unclear if this was due to actor availability or just the absence of a solid story with which they could say goodbye to him. In the end, they decided to create a completely new character for Voyager, however, Barclay would eventually have links to the EMH. A Barclay hologram was a built-in failsafe for the Doctor in the episode projections, and the real Barclay requested the EMH's help later in the series. In the episode Lifeline, Barclay teams up with the Voyager's Doctor to cure the EMH's creator, Louis Zimmerman, of a terminal illness. Given Barclay's reclusive nature, it's hardly surprising that the bedside manner of Voyager's Doctor left a lot to be desired. And those were 10 things that you hopefully didn't already know about Reg Barclay. Let me know in the comments anything else about Reg that you think we should know. You can also subscribe to the channel to never miss a new video. If you want to find us on various social medias, you can do so at either Trek Culture or Trek Culture YT. And if you want to find me on social media, you can do so by simply searching Trekkie Bree. But with all that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and don't forget to live long and prosper.